It looks like it's time to drop our top 50 roller coasters of 2024. Hey everybody, it's Paul from the 125 Roller Coaster Challenge, and let's get ready to talk about our top 50 roller coasters of 2024. Now, we kicked off this list with our number 100 to 51st ranked roller coasters a few days ago, and to see those coasters, check out the link above. But now we're talking about the cream of the crop, the best of the best, and our top 50 roller coasters we have ever ridden. In our last video, we provided each coaster's ranking in both 2023 and 2024 and the total change. So let's do it again for this video. Now, before we start, last time we gave a few honorable mentions before we dove in, and in this video, let's talk about the roller coasters that dropped out of our rankings from 2023. Kicking off this list is Thunderbolt at Kennywood, which was number 67. Thunderhead at Dollywood held the 72nd spot. The Jersey Devil at Six Flags Great Adventure kept the 78th spot warm in 2023, while Exhibition Everest at Disney Animal Kingdom peaked at 81st. The Raven at Holiday World was a staple of our top 100 for years, but dropped off after being 82nd last year, as River King Mine Train at Six Flags St. Louis faded from our memories and left our list after being 85th. A very unique roller coaster at Fun Spot Kissimmee called Hurricane held the 88th spot in 2023. As the tallest dive coaster in the world, Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland was at number 89. So there was a lot that dropped out. So here's the next one on our list, White Lightning, the first ever coaster that got GCI Titan Track, and that was at Fun Spot Orlando, and it kept the 90th spot warm. As a classic from Kings Island, Adventure Express was at number 93. Three more coasters dropped out of our 2023 rankings, and they included Georgia Scorcher and Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Over Georgia, leaving the 95th and 98th coaster spots respectively, while the Reborn Sidewinder, now called Jolly Rancher Remix, from Hershey Park rounds out this list at number 96. All in all, we had 13 roller coasters leave our top 100 last year, and they had to be replaced, so time to see who took those spots. Our 50th coaster in 2024 is a new coaster for us, and again, we have to thank our West Coast trip for allowing us to ride a lot of new and amazing coasters. The Ninja at Six Flags Magic Mountain is another Arrow suspended coaster, and as you can see from our last video, we tend to enjoy these. Ninja is our all-around favorite, and with its location at the top of Magic Mountain, flying down that hill while you're weaving in and out of the log flume and giving great rides every time. We rode this coaster all 4 days we visited this park, and fingers crossed, this ride is going to be around for years to come. Indoor coasters usually don't get a lot of love from us, but when it comes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shellraiser at Nickelodeon Universe at the American Dream Mall, this coaster is epic. Now, sliding down our rankings 16 spots this year, this coaster has a record for the steepest drop, featuring launches, inversions, and pretty much anything else you could dream of, even an amazing view of the New York City skyline. The reason for this coaster dropping is because it never ran in 2024 and also has a lot of shaking, which is shocking because this is a fairly new coaster. Fingers crossed that in 2025, this coaster becomes reliable and they make the adjustments for a much smoother ride. Sometimes rides get adjusted and even reconfigured, and that is the case with our 48th coaster, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. At one point, this coaster was number 1 in our rankings, but that was when it had the original launch lift hill, and we kept flying down those hills so fast that when we hit the brake run, it was actually smoking. No, we're not even joking, there's actual smoke. But that was years ago, and since then this ride got a lot of adjustments. So much now that it actually has a chain lift hill instead of the iconic launch. Dropping another 27 spots this year, we hope to get back to Dollywood in 2025 to see where this ride stacks up with all these new changes. Six Flags loves the name Goliath. There is a few of those on this list, but coming in at number 47 is our newest one from Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is a very unique hypercoaster where speed and not airtime is the main selling points. Now don't get us wrong, there is some airtime, but this 255-foot drop gets this coaster flying at 85 miles per hour, and that makes for a very intense ride. Oh, and have you ever seen a more majestic sign for a coaster? I think not. From a giant coaster to one that's a little smaller in stature, Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia is that little RMC that could. One of the smallest and shortest rides RMC has ever built, this coaster has some very unique elements, especially the step-up underflip, which keeps this ride in the top 50 at number 46. Now going back into our giant coasters, at number 45 is the first ever B&M Giga Coaster, Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. For our first attempt at this style roller coaster, B&M knocked it out of the park, and this is by far the best ride in all of Canada. While it doesn't get as much love as its younger brother Fury 325, this coaster is amazing and a must ride if you ever venture up north. Another new ride for us coming in at number 44 is one that is pretty unique. While it's known by the company as a Skyrocket 3 model, we all know it as Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Known for having the largest vertical loop, this ride launches you out at 70 miles an hour, but by the time you reach the apex of the loop, this ride is all about the hang time. Now throw in a dive drop and backwards launch, and this ride is so full of surprises that it had to make our top 50. Time to turn back to Florida, and the classic B&M looping coaster Kumba from Busch Gardens, Tampa holds down the number 43 spot. When we first rode it, we're not gonna lie, it was pretty rough and was rumored to be closing soon. Well, going into 2025, this coaster has been adjusted and had track work done so that it is back to being pretty smooth, and of course, it's still standing. Kumba is a must ride at this park every visit. Our 42nd coaster is another mini RMC, and this time we are heading to Kentucky Kingdom for Storm Chaser. It's hard to believe this coaster was once a dueling wooden coaster called Twisted Twins. When the park reopened, RMC got their hands on this ride, and to say it's intense is an understatement. This ride is like riding a bull, and of course, this is the first coaster with our favorite element, the barrel roll drop. Our last visit to this park, we got to marathon this coaster, and every ride seemed to be better than the last. Kings Island is one of our favorite parks, and they keep getting better with each new coaster addition. While there is some debate as to where Orion fits in, is it a large hyper or barely a giga, it is our 41st coaster, and it has no debate that this is definitely a top 50 ride. Reaching the height of 274 feet off the ground, it drops to an even 300 feet and flies with speeds over 90 miles per hour. Hyper, giga, who cares? This coaster is amazing. Now we have hit our top 40 with yet another new coaster for 2024. Are you starting to see why 13 coasters had to drop out? And for this one, we're going to head all the way to Knott's Berry Farms. It is said that this park is the original theme park, and it's hard to disagree with all this theming. Anchoring their boardwalk section, their Skurslauer Infinity Coaster has a beyond vertical drop, a negative G-stall, and a Cobra roll that brings all the thrills. Hang time is themed to surfing, and it nails that experience perfectly. Yes, some people consider it a dive coaster because there is a hold break before you drop, but for us, it's just the best Skurslauer that has ever been created and earns our 40th spot. From sunny California, our 39th coaster takes us into the heartland and back to Silver Dollar City. To say that Time Traveler is unique is really underselling it. This is the only spinning coaster in the United States with launches, beyond vertical drops, and even a dive loop. We have never seen anything like this, and even though we only got one ride on it, front row at least, the memory of this ride is still strong and keeps this ride ranked very high. So, do you only like modern high thrill rides? Well, our 38th coaster cracks that myth. Looking at the stats of Jackrabbit at Kennywood, you would say that it's pretty much a kiddie coaster, and that's pretty accurate. It's only 40 feet tall, 70-foot drop, 45 miles per hour. Come on, is this really a top 50 roller coaster? Well, what the stats don't tell you is that this classic 1920 coaster is an airtime machine. Using the terrain of Kennywood to its full advantage, you are bouncing out of your seat the entire ride, and we can't wait to ride this 100-year-old coaster again in 2025. Now, while Storm Chaser was marathon the last time we visited Kentucky Kingdom, our 37th coaster was actually skipped, and we still regret that decision to this day. Lightning Run is another coaster where the stats don't matter. It's a ride experience, and what that experience tells us is that this coaster needs to be cloned. Quick turns, unexpected laterals, and of course, serious ejector airtime is packed into this small coaster and makes it simply amazing. Okay, we are not fans of theming when it comes to coasters. We put more value in the design, speed, airtime, and even the laterals than if they dress it up with some robots and fancy queue. And that is why having Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure from Universal Islands of Adventure at number 36 has to tell you something. This ride is straddled, launched, and a dark ride all in one, and while the theming is pretty good, this ride with its multiple launches and drop track really brings the fun. While we tend to avoid long lines, this one was actually worth it. Alright, our 35th coaster goes back to the classics. Well, actually, it's simply iconic, and it has to be the Coney Island Cyclone. Come on, there's a reason why this coaster is one of the most famous in the world, and whose layout has been copied numerous times. This coaster brings it all. We bet this ride would score even higher if we got to ride it in the back, but sadly, they only filled the ride from the front to the rear, and all 3 times we went, the furthest back we were able to get was only the 3rd row. Alright, now that we are almost halfway through with our list, we are going to see some familiar faces, and that starts out with one of the best B&M inverted coasters, Afterburn at Carowinds. Now nestled in the back of the park by the water park, it's easy to skip or even completely miss this coaster, but wow, that would be a huge mistake. This invert really pushes you through each element at a fast pace, and you don't even have time to catch your breath. Another must ride every time. Now, as we mentioned in our last video, when a coaster is the first of something, it has to have your respect, and that is the case with Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This is the first coaster to ever break the 300-foot barrier, and as it celebrates its 25th birthday, it comes in at number 33 on our list. That drop, the speed, and those fun overbank turns, this Intamin still gets our blood flowing every ride. Now, you can't make a top 50 roller coaster list without some controversy, and our 32nd pick will turn some heads. But the reality is, we only rode Voyage at Holiday World once, and we weren't really blown away. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a great ride, fun and long, but we just didn't see what others have seen in this to make it a top 5 coaster. We still respect it, and of course, we will try to get back out there to Holiday World this year to see what others see in this ride. But for us, the Voyage falls at number 32. Our home park is Hershey Park, and yes, we get spoiled sometimes, and that is the case with our 31st coaster, Sky Rush. One of the most intense coasters on the planet, Sky Rush got brand new restraints this year, and for so many people, this was the greatest gift of all. No longer is it going to be known as Thigh Crush. These new restraints allow riders to fly out of their seats without losing blood flow to their legs. We love Sky Rush, and even though it dropped out of our top 30, it's a marathon every season. Alright, we reached number 30, and once again, repeat after me, it's a new coaster for 2024, and it is the top dog at Knott's Berry Farm. We, of course, are talking about Ghost Rider. Now, we visited this park in mid-June, and this coaster was running only one train, which meant over a 2-hour wait to get on this coaster. Add in all the filming that we had planned, and we had 2 days to do it, so we only got one ride on this beast, but we gotta admit, it was pretty amazing. If we ever make it back out to Southern California, this ride will be high on our list to marathon again, but for this time, it's only at number 30. Since we just got done talking about a one and done coaster, our 29th is the opposite, where we ride this coaster 20 to 30 times a year. And that, of course, is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. Now, this is the first hypercoaster we ever rode, and even though we know every twist and turn, it's still one of the best B&Ms around. Now, it did drop a bit this year because it's starting to get that classic B&M rattle, but the layout and the floater air, is second to none. When you're talking about top coaster lists, it's rare to see a ride from a small park make it to that list, especially in the top 30. Yes, you see Ravine Flyer 2, or maybe Boulder Dash, or even a personal favorite, but for number 28, we have to give that honor to Silver Comet at Niagara Amusement Park. Wait, what? Okay, hear me out. This hybrid coaster from CCI was actually left for dead after Martin's Fantasy Island closed. We would actually see it from the highway as we drove to Grand Island, New York on our way to Niagara University. Well, Gene Staples bought the park and gave this coaster the TLC that it deserves, and now this ride is simply perfect. The maintenance staff at this park has smoothed out every turn and hill, and this ride just pops. Make sure you visit this park on your way to Canada's Wonderland or Six Flags Darien Lake because this coaster is a true treasure. All right, we're heading back home to Hershey Park for our 27th coaster, and that is Candymonium. Now, this is one of the newest B&M hypers and is the lead attraction in the brand new entrance for the park that opened in 2020. Now, this ride has some of the best floater airtime, but strangely, it can be found in the middle of the train. Seriously, if you're in rows 3 or 5, your butt will never touch the seat. While the second half of this ride could be better, its condition gives it a slight edge over Nitro. All right, it's time for another questionable pick, and this time we go back to Cedar Point. No, it's not Rougarou again. That coaster came in at number 84, but it is along the same line. When we last visited Cedar Point, Janine and myself kept marathoning a coaster, and each ride was more fun than the last, and that ride was Gatekeeper. This wing coaster does not get much love, especially with the lineup that Cedar Point has, but that over-the-wing drop, along with the keyholes, makes this coaster so much fun that it shot up 14 on our list. Okay, this video is now halfway done, and if you agree or disagree with our rankings so far, let us know. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are aiming to reach 10,000 subs this year, and we'll be dropping new content daily. So without further ado, let's talk about our top 25. Kicking it off, we head back to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and we just gotta show our love for Verbolten. This ride replaced a classic, but did it with style. Launches, indoor surprises, and of course, that iconic drop over the river. This coaster brings the fun and thrills in one unique ride. For our 24th coaster, we have to head to SeaWorld Orlando and check out their flying coaster, Manta. What can we say about this flyer? It has all the elements of a typical B&M flying coaster. A great drop, sweeping turns, and of course, the pretzel loop that makes you gray out if you're in the back seat. This was our top flying coaster for years and still an amazing ride, but it did get dethroned this year, and that coaster will be coming up soon. Manta is the first thing you see when you get into the park, and who can forget the 100 manta rays that you encounter when you're waiting in the queue. This is a great ride every time. Guess what? Our 23rd coaster is new for us again for 2024, but this one we didn't see coming. When you visit Six Flags Magic Mountain, you know it's all about the coaster lineup. So there's so many iconic coasters like Viper, Superman Escape from Krypton, and of course, X2. Why didn't someone mention Apocalypse the Ride when they're making those lists? Seriously, we knew nothing about this coaster until we stumbled upon it in the back of the underground section. And when we got there, we were not prepared for what we found. Holy cow, this ride was out of control. We flew back and forth and even felt the train float above the track a few times during turns. And no, this wasn't a one-time thing. Like Ninja, we rode this coaster all 4 days, and each time it delivered these kind of insane rides. Front seat, middle, back row, every spot on this train had us flying around. This hidden gem was amazing, and that is why it enters our rankings at number 23. Now, Kings Island has some great coasters, and we loved Banshee from the first time we ever rode it. It was always a top 20 ride, but this year it slips down to number 22 because of the new additions to our rankings. But this coaster will always be our ringtone, and yes, we are serious. It's been a while since we talked about a Goliath, so let's make it our 21st coaster, but this time it's at Six Flags Over Georgia. Now, we have only visited this park once, but that has to change for 2025. This hyper is on most coaster enthusiasts' top lists, and there is a reason why. This coaster brings the airtime in bunches while matching the speed of other top coasters. Alright, it's top 20 time, so let's kick it off with Intimidator 305. Project 305. Wait, what's it called now? Pantarium? Yep, they can change the name, they can change the paint job, but what they can't change is the fact that this is one of the most intense coasters on the planet. Now, we have been riding Pantarium, it's going to take a while for us to get used to his new name, since the first year of the 125 Roller Coaster Challenge, and every time we marvel at the speed and the intensity. Fingers crossed that we can enjoy this coaster as we age, but for now, it's holding on to our top 20 ranking. Dorney Park has finally got a new roller coaster in 2024, but its best is still Talon Grip of Fear. This classic B&M inverted coaster has been a staple of this park for decades, but stays in our top 20 at number 19. Why? Well, this is the only inverted coaster where we actually get airtime every time. It's a simple layout that really packs a punch. While Six Flags Magic Mountain's GCI coaster stormed into our rankings, it's still not the best GCI. Mystic Timbers at Kings Island is still the top dog and comes in at number 18. While others might have the intensity, this coaster really feels like you're floating on air, even skiing through the woods, and provides such a perfect time every time that we don't even mind hanging out in the shed. Now, staying at Kings Island for our next coaster, our 17th coaster takes us back to the B&M Hypercoasters, and this one is Diamondback. Now, one of the coolest things about Kings Island is that even though you're in a major amusement park, a lot of rides give you the feeling of isolation, and that is true with Diamondback. You fly into the woods, and while having some of the best ejector airtime, you end with a great splashdown. Simply perfection. Now, it's been a while since we had an RMC coaster on this list, but that's going to change starting now, with Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England coming in at number 16. Now, this was the first RMC where we learned how to ride these, and wow, this Iron Horse conversion really took these coasters to a new level. While others say the third lap around the course is kind of dragging, we find it perfect, and this coaster highlights the creativity that RMC has now made standard. Our 15th coaster is one that we need to give an apology to. For years, we had Maverick at Cedar Point outside our top 25, sometimes outside our top 50. But there was one reason for that. This coaster is a greatest hits album for Intamin, and its second launch is crazy intense. But the fact that it's all trimmed down to nothing by the time you get to the hill was always sad for me. Why do you even bother doing that launch if you're just going to kill it? Well, this year I decided to just take the ride for what it is, and guess what? It's our 15th best ride. Jumping up 20 spots this year, we can now appreciate what Maverick is all about, and we will not make that mistake again. Our top B&M hypercoaster comes in at number 14, and that is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. Now, this coaster has everything that we love about this style, along with its iconic setting. Most people agree that this is the best of the bunch, and after making this coaster our 300th credit, we just gotta agree. Okay, time for the hate. No, seriously, our 13th coaster is a lot of people's number one coaster. The fact that it isn't in the top 5 will have people with pitchforks at my door. Well, we gotta put it where we think it currently belongs, so I'm sorry in advance. Our 13th spot goes to Fury 325 at Carowinds. Hello? Hello? Is anyone still watching? If you're still here, please let me explain. It's been a while since we last rode Fury 325, and the 12 coasters above it have been ridden more often. Add in the fact that it, almost fell down last year, and we enjoy the other 12 coasters more, there really was no other place to put it. Carowinds is high on our list to visit this year, and with that, we hope that Fury 325 storms back into the top 10 soon. Now, talking about intense coasters, Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg has really upped its game in the last few years. 4 years ago, this coaster was sitting in the mid-70s on our rankings, but we don't know what happened, but for the last 2 years, this ride has gone loco. Yes, there is some neck snapping around the Cobra roll, but the rest of this ride is fairly smooth considering how crazy the pacing is. Alpe brings the intensity every trip and keeps our relief band pinned at 5 so we're able to walk off this ride without help. Now, right outside the top 10 is what the Golden Ticket Awards call the best wooden coaster in the world the last few years. Knoebels has been a part of our lives for decades, and having Phoenix so close is really amazing. Looking at the stats of this ride, they aren't very impressive, but even without the height, speed, and other factors, the condition and the layout makes this coaster stand above the rest. The amount of airtime packed into this coaster is second to none, and with only a buzz bar keeping you in, you truly bounce around your seat the entire ride. Phoenix is our top classic wooden coaster, and it's hard to see them getting unthroned anytime in the future. Now it's time for a top 10. Drum roll, please. We're going to head to Busch Gardens, Tampa for number 10, and that is the B&M invert that stands above the rest for one simple reason: the troughs. Montu sits at the far corner of the park, but dominates your walk when you get to the entrance. Getting a brand new paint job recently, this coaster brings the intensity and the near-miss elements to make every ride memorable. If you sit in the death seat, which is the back row, the far side, you feel like you're about to hit the side walls and you whip in and out of the troughs, and you leave that station completely breathless. Coming in at number 9, let's have another questionable pick, which is, again, a lot of people's number 1 coaster. Steel Vengeance is a coaster we always call RMC's greatest hits, and its stats are second to none. A vertical drop, over 200 feet, and holds the record for the amount of airtime. Why is this stuck at number 9? Well, just like Fury, it's been a while since we got on this coaster, which we are going to change this year. But for us, the outer wave turn and how it flies through the structure, we know that this position will be the lowest that this coaster ever goes. We simply love Steve. Twisted Timbers was another coaster that at one point held our top spot in the past. While not having a huge footprint like Steel Vengeance, this mid-size RMC coaster has so much ejector air that it has to stay in our top 10. So what puts this coaster above Fury, Phoenix, and even Steel Vengeance? Well, it has one of our favorite elements, and that is the barrel roll drop. And that element, with that airtime, keeps Twisted Timber in our 8th spot. Now, coming in at number 7 is a new ride for us for 2024. And this one simply put the fear of God into me while waiting in line. Yes, I have ridden 388 coasters, but believe it or not, I'm still afraid of heights. So the thought of lying on my stomach as we slowly climbed Tatsu's lift hill left me paralyzed. Yes, the stats are only 150 feet off the ground, but remember, this coaster is on top of Magic Mountain. So there are portions of this ride where you are suspended over 250 feet from the actual ground. Throw in an intense pretzel loop and Tatsu flies into our hearts and our top 10. Our number 2 coaster in 2023 is now just outside our top 5. At number 6, it's Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. Now this is Intamin copying RMC's homework with some great theming to boot. While the first part of the ride is quick transitions and interactions with dinosaurs, this ride really hits high gear after the top hat. Ending with the pterodactyl roll at the end, this ride brings intensity and fun. So why did it drop in the rankings? Well, we only got one ride on this coaster, while the other coasters above it have all been double digits. Fingers crossed we can add more rides in 2025. Top 5? Yep, these coasters are the best. And we kick it off with another Magic Mountain coaster that was pretty solid until we got our last ride. Twisted Colossus is a Morbius track coaster with a green side and a blue side. You ride both in a cycle, but the majority of the time, the trains don't sync up, which is the case all 4 days that we visited, except our last ride. While both sides of the track are amazing by themselves, the way the trains interact together is something to behold, and so rare and amazing that it launched Twisted Colossus into our top 5. I truly wish that they would do what they do with West Coast Racers and hold the first train at the bottom of the lift hill until the other train lines up, because having that incredible ride, a normal ride, instead of a perfect accident will really be a treat to all the guests of Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now, number 4 actually did not change from last year, and that is Pantheon Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This Intamin coaster is pretty unique with its triple launch, huge spike, and intense layout. While the theming is pretty lackluster, we simply don't factor that in too much, so it doesn't hurt its place in the rankings. And overall, the 3 rides we got this year did not disappoint. Also of note, the best element is very unexpected, but a lot of fun. We don't want to ruin the surprise for you, but just make sure you stay on your toes when you ride Pantheon. To say our number 3 coaster gave a lackluster ride this spring would be an understatement. Heck, we barely had enough speed to make it back into the station. But lucky for El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure is our home Six Flags park, and we made it back 3 more times this year, and we got rides worthy of this position. We can chalk it up to early season, cooler weather, or just a bad day. The rest of the year, the Bull brought it. Seriously, this coaster brought it. Flying through its aggressive layout, it truly felt like the first time we rode it years ago, and the August rides were especially flying back into the station. El Toro truly is our top winning coaster. Now, talking about home field advantage, coming in at number 2 is Wildcats Revenge at Hershey Park. Now, every time we visit this park, we jump on this ride 1, 2, maybe 3 times, and it has become a tradition. While we're not someone who counts rides, we have probably ridden this coaster over 100 times in 2024, and we never got a bad ride. Front row, back row, middle, it doesn't matter. Wildcats Revenge has a perfect mix of intensity, pacing, inversions, and fun. I know a lot of people will question this coaster being so high up in the rankings, and you may be right, but when you have a perfect RMC in your backyard, you got to give it some love. So before we unveil our top coaster, let's recap the top 10. Number 10 is Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa, our top inverted coaster thanks to the troughs. Number 9 is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, and we know it's going to move up after we get some 2025 rides. Number 8 is a former number 1, Twisted Timbers at Kings Dominion. Small frame, a ton of ejector airtime, and that barrel roll drop to boot. Number 7, we are flying high with Tatsu, the first coaster in a long time that put fear in my heart before boarding. Number 6 is the Intense Velocicoaster at Universal Islands of Adventure. Our only ride on it was enough to get it into the top 10. We need a few more rides for it to get back into the top 5. Number 5 is another ride from 2024, and it makes our top 5 with a race. Twisted Colossus at Magic Mountain is a solid coaster, but wouldn't have scored so high if it wasn't for that epic racing ride. Number 4 stays the same with Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and there is nothing else like this coaster. Number 3 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, and the Bull is back. It tries to kill you, and you're going to love every second of it. And at number 2, we have our home RMC, Wildcats Revenge, the perfect mid-side coaster with a lot of fun and a lot of pop. So that brings us to our top coaster, and for the second year in a row, it's Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. This coaster has the height, the beyond vertical drop, the speed, the intensity, and our favorite element of all time, the death roll, which is basically a barrel roll drop while you're flying at 70 miles an hour. Seriously, it feels like you're in a washing machine. Every trip when I go to Florida, this coaster gets 4 to 5 rides, and every time it's simply amazing. So there you have it, our top 50 roller coasters. So what do you agree with? Where are we way off? Let us know in the comment sections, and make sure you check out our Busch Gardens Tampa video below.